Welcome to the Second Chance Podcast with Jeff Robertson, where we dive into stories of resilience, redemption, and transformation. Today's guests are Dr. Dean Sunseri and HollyKem Sunseri, co-authors of A Roadmap to the Soul, a practical guide to love, compassion, and inner peace. Married since 1991, Dean and HollyKem have dedicated their lives to helping individuals, couples, and families heal from trauma, rebuild relationships, and find purpose. From overcoming addiction and personal challenges to adopting a son in the face of adversity, their journey is a testament to the power of second chances. Get ready for a heartfelt conversation filled with wisdom, hope, and practical insights for turning life's biggest obstacles into its greatest treasures. Welcome to the show, you guys. How are we?
Pretty good.
Good. I
Good,
like that
good.
introduction.
That's
Yeah, good.
nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just reading up on everyone and just kind of getting to know you all. And we talk a lot about second chances on here, but Holly Kim, I was learning more about your recovery from addiction and just your walk through the criminal justice system is just incredibly inspiring by itself. What mindset shift or moment was the catalyst for your transformation, and how did it shape your approach to helping others?
Well, I got sober at 22. However, I was convicted at 19.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was 19. I was convicted. And in that, I was looking at 10 years in the penitentiary. I had to plead guilty to get a year probation.
yeah,
And however, this is in the early 80s. Yeah, early 80s. And if I got in trouble in the 1 year, I was looking at 10 years, no good time.
yeah,
So that was a bit of a mess, right?
yeah.
And you would think that I would have gotten sober from that, but I didn't. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand that aren't addicts is that we're not afraid to die.
Yeah.
We're afraid to live. So, living was my issue and learning to, love myself, which means I couldn't do love myself. So I really couldn't love you.
Yeah.
So through that process of, you know, the cycle of self-hatred, and I was married at the time, not to Dean, obviously. And through that, just my stepfather went to treatment, which I grew up with him since I was 6 years old. And when I was 21 years old, he went to treatment. And through the family week, I learned that there was this thing called tolerance. And as you used, your tolerance grew.
Yeah.
And then there came a day when you used a little bit, but it was like you used a lot. And at that point, you could overdose and die. So when I came out of that, came out of the family week and all that, I was using, and I did some secanols and it didn't touch me. And I knew I'm on my journey. And at that point, I loved Jesus. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, but I shot dope with Jesus, okay?
Yeah.
Because that was the only person I knew that loved me. Well, I didn't love me, but I was hoping he'd love me, right? Or at
Yeah.
least he understood me. I felt like he understood me, even though I was in this mess, that he had compassion for me. So through that process, calling out to him, I had to make a decision. Was I going to try something different? And that's what I did at 22. I decided to, take that journey and get sober January 10th of 1983. And it's been 41 years, be 42 if I make it to,
Yeah.
January 10th of 2005, 25.
It seems like you're well on your way, though, right?
I hope so.
She better not mess up at this point.
I still work hard, but I still work on myself because I'm a human being, and
Yeah.
we've had lots of friends that have committed suicide through recovery, 30
Yeah.
years sober, go back out. So, I don't take it for granted. Like, it's not like I have lots of safety things in place.
Yeah.
And, I'm in a group with some women, I still work on myself. So, I'm not lax.
You really summed it up coming out of the gate, right? Of speaking to that person that is struggling and they're alone. And what you said there, I didn't hear it till later in life, but I never struggled with addiction like you all did, but coaching and some of the things that I get to work in, but even my own personal stuff. And my wife helped me with that one time about learning to love yourself. And once that was said to me, was I would remember going back, and like you said, I had these quiet
Mhm.
conversations, and sometimes loud anger fueled with God, right? And
Right.
just throw it, just letting who the universe
Right.
have it, because I was struggling to figure that out. And um my friends, and I remember hearing the term like get right with you, man. It's like you really need to get right with you. And I didn't understand what that meant. Um and then my wife one day was talking to my daughter, and she said, they were talking about, my daughter's young, and she was like talking about marriage or love or something. And my mom said, or my wife said, once you learn to love yourself, then the right person's gonna come along for you to love. And I
Mhm.
was like,
Mm.
dang, right? It was just that's. And you don't like the way you summed it up there is, you're like, for me, you're talking 35 years maybe or so of just struggle in my head of fighting with that. So I understand the way you sum that up, and you sum it up so good. Like the way you frame that is such a. So what I'm hoping, like just coming out of the gate, is folks, you're listening to this, you're right there where Holly Kim was, or you're there, and those, like, don't let that. If you need to, hit pause, because there's a lot more good that coming. We got more questions or more conversation, but that's strong to lead off with. But Dean, even yourself, you survived a riptide, which is a powerful metaphor for life struggles. Can you share how that experience changed your outlook on life and how you approach your challenges now?
Yeah, that was quite an experience.
Mhm.
I was swimming with my son, and we got caught in the riptide. And I've always had a strong faith, and knew that some of the things that we were doing were really part of God's plan. And so, when we had this experience, it was on Good Friday. So Good
Mhm.
Friday's the time to when the Lord was
Christianity.
crucified in Christianity, and we were actually swimming in the afternoon around 1 or 2 o'clock, which is right around the time traditionally of the crucifixion. And so it was on, and it happened to be on the same day that the Passover.
Right.
And so we were swimming in this out in the ocean, and we got caught in this riptide. And my son was with me, and I knew that we needed to start moving to the side, and to get out of it, but we were just caught in it.
Mhm.
And my son turned to me and he said, Dad, I'm not going to make it.
Mm,
And I said,
Mhm.
no, no, you're going to make it. We're going to make it. But in the midst of this struggle that we were really flirting with death, I really felt a peace, like something, like we were going to be okay in the midst of the craziness. And so there was a lot going on, but the long short of the story was we were miraculously spared, and we were able to get out of it, and we were able to get to the shore. And things were it was just, we were exhausted. My wife wanted me to go to the hospital. My son's name is Moses.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of symbolism there, because Moses on Passover,
Mhm.
is all about Moses bringing the people from death to life, the death angel passing over. And Moses' name is literally in Hebrew means taken from the water.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
so we were both taken from the water on that particular day. So there was a lot going on a lot of different levels. We were literally dealing with this life-threatening event, but the symbolism of the time and so forth. And so I was encouraging him once we survived. I said, this is part of our destiny. We were meant to be taken out today, and there's a plan, there's a purpose to our lives, and we need to know what that is, and certainly give thanks to God. But I mean, for me personally, it's really just turned into every day's a gift, you know, Every
Yeah.
day is I'm just thankful that I'm up another day and get to do what I believe God has called us to do. And it really is being able to help people like we're doing today and talking about some of the gifts that He's given us. But yeah, that was quite an experience. It was things just shifted when you kind of look at death in the face,
Yeah.
and then overcome that and see that it wasn't just me that was delivered me. It just gives a whole different perspective. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
quite an extraordinary experience.
No, you're right. When you get to brush up against your mortality and just
Mhm.
kind of take that deep breath of realizing how fast you could have left here.
Mhm.
That is, and then yeah, I am 100% on that. Yeah, somewhere along the lines you all meet. And I enjoy hearing the stories of how folks connected just as much as I do some of the other stuff. But life kind of crosses your paths together. What did that look like?
Yeah.
Well, I was divorced and
Yeah,
moved to the city. I lived in Baton Rouge in one city and came to New Orleans. And I was a substance abuse counselor and definitely grieving a relationship and not looking for another one.
yeah,
So, on my journey and, love God and love Jesus and wanted to know more. And I met Dean and, the funny
We had
story.
a mutual friend. In fact, I talked to him last week. He called me and reminded me of the story. His roommate was HollyKem,
Yeah,
and Robert
yeah,
and
right.
HollyKem were roommates. And I was in the seminary at the time.
To be a Catholic priest.
Yeah, to be a Catholic priest. And I was really on my way out. I was just had some experiences in the 12-step program and kind of looking at my own recovery process that helped me grow closer to God, but kind of out of the seminary system. And Robert he came to the seminary for lunch. I forgot that. And he was looking at around. He was like, this place is dead, man. And he was looking at me. He was saying, you too serious. You need to have fun, man. So he felt sorry for me. And so he said, you need to come out with me and my roommate and some friends, and we're going to have fun. I said, okay, where are we going? We meeting at a coffee shop. So PJ's Coffee Shop or Magazine was the day that his roommate walked in the coffee shop. And, I took celibacy, the commitment to that, very seriously. And, but when I saw HollyKem, things began to awaken.
until that moment, right?
Yes, that had been dormant for a long time. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, what's happening here? But no, we had met, and I was quite intrigued by her because there was something about she's from the Bayou. She's from there's a certain rawness that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like she's one of the only persons I know that can curse and say God in the same sentence, and it's not sacrilegious.
Yeah.
It just makes total sense. So I had met her, and she had such a real, authentic connection that was really admirable, and I think that's what drew us together. We both were seeking, spiritual health, psychological health, emotional health, and we found each other at a time when we both were wounded in certain ways, from different ways. But she was coming from the streets, I was coming from the seminary. But we met, and then and so we. What did you say when you first met me?
Oh, I asked him, my roommate, I said, tell me about that guy again. And he said, tell me about him again. And he goes, well, he is in the he's in the seminary, but I'm dyslexic. I say things wrong. And sometimes I don't even ask what that means. And I didn't. So when him and I were walking, he happened to be walking next to me. And I was like, so how do you like it in the cemetery? And
That's right.
I didn't even know I said it wrong, right? And
Yeah.
he goes, oh, it's kind of dead there. And I said, oh, well, that's not good. So then it's about 20 of us. We all go dancing, because we're all in recovery, in a little pack, right? We all go
Yeah.
dancing, then we all leave together. And someone says when we're all dancing that guy is pointing to him that he's going to be a Catholic priest. I said, he is? I said, I have got to talk to him. So as we're walking out, I run and catch up with him. And I'm like, I hear you're going to be a Catholic priest. I effing love Jesus. I said, will you have coffee with me? I said, I want to talk about Jesus and I need to learn more. And I said, people cannot handle me. I'm too much into God. And he said, well, sure. So then we started having coffee and, asking questions about God and just talking about, what we were healing from and that kind of thing. And we became just really good friends. And then he liked me, and I'm like, no, you're too young. So, but he didn't give up. Thank God.
It also led to you to adopting a child.
Yeah.
After overcoming both your like just personal hurdles. But that had to be probably one of the most rewarding but daunting events in your lives. But how has that journey as parents impacted your perspective on just love, forgiveness, and
Mm.
second chances? Or how's it helped kind of mold you to now?
Well, what's interesting is one of the reasons why I told Dean no was I didn't feel worthy of his innocence.
Mm.
And then when we were talking about, we were married 8 years before we got Moses. And when we were, one day, my sister has 8 children, but at this point she had 7. Her 7th child is Joshua. And she happened to live close to us. She had always lived away. And so she moved back to Louisiana and she asked us to watch Joshua one time. So I'm holding Joshua and he's about 4 or 5 months old. And I start to weep. I mean, hysterically weeping. And I realized that I just did not feel worthy of that innocent love.
Yeah.
And as I started to realize that and work on that, then that opened us up to adoption.
Yeah.
And so and then there was issues because I was pardoned.
Yep.
I was pardoned by the governor of Louisiana, not the one you can buy from. The one you had to be honest. So I was pardoned. There was only 6 of us out of 300 and something, but I was never expunged, which I didn't even understand all that. And so I ended up, when we decided to adopt internationally, I couldn't meet the criteria because you have to be expunged.
Yep.
So we took us a while to get that done.
Yeah, I called my hotshot uncle lawyer. He's my godfather, Uncle Larry. And I said, you may not know this about my wife, but she's a convicted felon, and and we need some help.
We need some help.
He said, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but I'll do whatever I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so he, you talk about second chances.
Yes.
He arranged a hearing for us with the judge to get an expungement.
And at that time,
they were no longer given expungement
in
because
Louisiana.
it has been so abused. And so he had asked me to see if I can get a few letters together from people that HollyKem has served as a counselor. And I sent out a notice for people to write, explain what we were doing, and character letters. And she probably got close to 80, 90 letters.
A lot.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I think
cool.
It was just part of the healing process of just her reading those letters. But, we had given those letters. He gave them to the judge. He gave them to the DA. We had the hearing. And at the hearing, my uncle went up to go talk at the bench. We were just sitting out there, and you could see him talking. But he said that the DA said, "Look, I'm supposed to fight this, but I've read these letters. I have nothing to say, Judge." And the judge said,
good.
"By law, I'm not supposed to give this expungement, but I'm giving the expungement." And he gave her the expungement. And
what was powerful, I was convicted when I was 19 years old, this on March 19th. 19 years and one day later, I'm in the same courtroom with the same judge.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And he gives
me. Do you remember you, or judge remember you?
I don't know. I remember
him. A lot of people. Just wondering, right? Hey, that's HollyKem. That's a good thing. You didn't leave a big impression on him when you were 19. Because if he would have remembered you, it may have been a it'd been a different
Yes.
circumstance.
Yes, because what he
That's
said to me, Jeff, when I was 19 years old, he said, "Where is your remorse?"
yeah.
And internally, I said to him back, I didn't say it out loud, obviously, but internally I said, "You couldn't handle if I let go of the pain that I'm in and how much
Mm,
cocaine it took to sedate me."
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That's in itself, though. When you look at, we never. I work with some folks, and in business. I told someone this the other day, and they was like, "What? I signed this and it's final." And I go, "It is until it's
Mhm.
not." And they're like,
Mhm.
"Well, what's that mean?" I go, "No, it's business. Nothing's ever final. You can always revisit an agreement, or you can if you want to negotiate. I mean, there's always time. Even after you signed and you need something to be changed, never.
Right.
And this is one of those too. When you spin it around into just life goes on,
Mhm.
and you get to live another day as long
Mhm.
as you're waking up. The one thing we know for sure, sun goes up and down. The clouds might get in the way,
Mhm.
but you get to live each day, and you can, whether it's 19, 20 years later, 30, whatever, next day, 4 years, you can go and absolutely make a difference.
Yes.
And you can go find your peace and what you're looking for. And it's so cool to hear that, how that came out. But also it led to a book, a
Mhm.
roadmap to the soul. And
Mhm.
this is where you talk about transforming life's secrets into treasures.
Mhm.
Um, what do you hope readers take away from that concept, and how can they apply it to their own lives?
Yeah, I think the key is to for us to each find our own purpose, right? And find a sense of direction that gives us meaning. And one of the things that we've learned over the years is that oftentimes our purpose is found in our
Mhm.
biggest hurts and our biggest secrets. So how do you go on a process where your secrets and your hurts are transformed into something that gives life to others,
Mhm.
and that becomes part of your purpose? I mean, we both dealt with addiction in our family systems, and that was always the most shameful thing in our lives, is dealing with that. And yet, once it was transformed, it became the way we
Mhm.
help so many others. So it went through the gauntlet of healing, and then as we go through that gauntlet of healing, then it turns into something that's, instead of being life taking, it becomes life giving. So our hope, the roadmap to the soul, is really a roadmap to help people go through that very same process, looking at their own lives and looking at some of the things that need to be, we say, healed, redeemed,
Right.
transformed, loved, all different words of saying that, so that it becomes part of the purpose, and becomes part of what we're supposed to give to others. So how do we do that? There's a whole process that HollyKem is gifted with dyslexia, and
That's right.
so she's really brilliant in so many ways. But I was getting all this education, and she was getting results, and I was asking her, what are you doing? How do you work with people? And she said, well, I see three parts. I see people switch. I see who they are, their hurt self, their angry self, a protective self, and who they are, their true self. And I've just learned how to navigate those three. And then we started putting a language to that, which ended up being a roadmap to the soul. But the purpose is, what is the stuff that needs to be cleared out so Jeff can walk in his purpose
Mhm.
and in who God has called him to be? And that's what we've done for really three and a half decades, is just helping individuals, couples, families do that whole journey.
Mhm.
You help you spend a lot of this time helping couples rebuild after infidelity or emotional
Mhm.
disconnection. Um, what's kind of some that transformative piece of advice you offer to couples looking for second chances in their marriage?
Well, you want me to
Yeah.
go? Well, one of the things is that if I don't know how to love me in a situation, I'll never be able to love you in that situation. And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know what that really looks like, because they'll say, I have communication. We don't connect. We don't communicate. Well, it's like they know that they're not connecting. They don't understand why. Because, even if they have the same definition and they know the stories, they're getting triggered, and it's like it's this mess, right? So it's like, in that, what we help people do is really look at the different parts, and you do your work in front of your mate. So what happens is you start to learn which part of you, and slot in like all the things from your life that is wounding. And if, let's just say, if we all lost the same thing in a family, then if that thing needs like 1,000 pounds of love to get to the other side, right? So it's not bleeding, right? Well, if everybody lost the same thing, who's going to love that? Right? Who's going to help me love that? Right? Because we all lost the same thing. So what happens is I get a little bit and then I stick it in a bucket. Well, you do that enough times, that bucket gets really freaking heavy. So then you come up with a part that is going to protect you from ever being hurt again, right? You don't want to be hurt again. So you start to protect yourself from that. And then what happens in a relationship when you're married is that each person triggers these wounds, right? Instead of seeing that as an opportunity to heal, it becomes, now you've become them. You've become them people that put wounds on me, and you know about those wounds, but you still doing things that is triggering this. So you need to stop. And I want you to stop that. But what happens is that's what creates the distance, versus understanding that this is my 1,000 pounds of pain that I need to learn to love, and know when it's triggered, how to have a voice about that. So we teach people how to have a voice and how to connect the dots. 10% is about you that's in front of me, but 90% of what's happening is what happened to me. So instead of me living from a place of trying to, keep that safe, and then you get distant, and then I'm not close to you. I don't want to make love to you. I'm not your friend anymore. You feel like the enemy, versus this needs a lot of love and attention. So in couples, we teach people how to love it themselves. The person listening starts to have compassion for me, vice versa, for you. And then I can have a voice about what it is that needs love, and I can ask you to hold my hand through it, instead of me asking you just to take it and make it go away, because it doesn't work.
Yeah, we say, we all carry wounds in a relationship into our marriage. We all carry our unhealthy patterns.
Right.
And those two things will either draw us closer together or tear us apart.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't learn how to communicate those things and transform them into ways of move us into a healing process, I actually believe that the wounds that we bring into a relationship are meant to be healed in the context of the relationship.
Right.
And how do they get healed? They need to come to the surface. How do they come to the surface? Get married, and they'll come to the surface.
They will come.
and so when they come to the surface, we either learn to work
Right.
with them together, or we play them out on each other.
Right.
And so if we don't learn to work with them together, we have that experience that we all say, I will never do that when I get married. And I say, how did that happen? How am I doing this? We all have that experience, but it's meant to be transformed. So we want to give people the skills to transform anything. And there's certain processes, two spiritual principles that have tremendous psychological application that can heal anything in a relationship, or repentance and forgiveness. And repentance is to have a heartfelt sorrow for the things that I've done to hurt you, and to own that, to speak about that, and to make a commitment to learn to do it differently. And then forgiveness is recognizing I've been hurt by what people have done to me. I've been hurt by things that you've done, and I'm willing to lay that hurt down on the altar and ask it to be removed. If I practice those two principles, which Jesus taught, he says that it'll usher heaven into a situation. And the same thing is true too of the opposites. If you want hell in your relationship, never apologize and never forgive. And I promise you, you'll have plenty of hell. It won't work out too well. So So those two principles are so key to be
Yeah.
practiced in a relationship, and how to do that, how to do it practically, are things that are skills you
It's a
just build
skill.
upon. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a skill.
You and this would probably be my challenge to anyone who's listening that's sitting in a little bit of pain. Um, I'd hit pause and kind of grab a little bit of reflection and rewind for go back about 3 minutes. And let's listen to this part again, because there's a lot that's in that needs to be unpacked there, and you hit a lot of things that really spoke to someone who's stuck, and there's tons of value in that, just the last 3 minutes. And the only thing I would probably add when you get to forgiveness is, if you can get to the point where you can forgive yourself first, it'll really move fast for you. And
Yeah.
if you can't do that initially, get it in there somewhere and just own whatever that mistake is, for yourself, and forgive yourself. I probably set on some things that I had set on some things way too long, because I just felt like I needed to carry them with me. And then I
Mm-hmm.
heard it one day, and somebody's like, why would you hold on to that? Forgive
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Hey, that's not a forever item, Jeff. Just forgive it, move on. Great stuff. But so this also leads in, and it fuels your Transform You online coaching program.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's your Does it build on the principles in your book? And then what kind of breakthroughs have you seen with your
Mm-hmm.
clients that go through that program?
Wow.
Yeah, well, it's a deep application of everything that we talk about in our book,
Mm-hmm.
and we do it over a number of classes and activations, and we do live coaching twice a week. So it's a whole process. But we've seen some great testimonies. My favorite
This
couple's
is his favorite.
testimony is one guy who's went through with his wife. He said, our fights went from 3 days to 30 seconds. He said, we're still having the fights, but they're only lasting 30 seconds instead of 3 days. I said, well, that's a good win right there.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I thought I grew up because we argued all the time, and I thought that was just what people did. I didn't
Right.
realize that there was peace in relationships. I thought every Friday, for when I was younger, I thought every Friday
Put
you
your gloves
you
on.
yeah, you put your gloves on, and you fought, and then you stayed mad for the weekend, and then you went back to your parted ways. Right? I never knew about not picking fights or being the new normalcy until I got older. So.
Yeah, and we do what we see, right? And it becomes our normal, right? So, in the
Yeah.
sense of learning to challenge all of that becomes really good. And, one of the things in the program, which has been really, I mean, we've been doing this a long time, and doing it online, it's been very interesting. I mean, we've had clients online and all that for a long time, but this has been really powerful because they're in the sanctity of their own home when they watch the videos and they
Yeah.
do the assignments. So they're getting to pick when it's emotionally safe for them. Okay, physically and emotionally. So they do that. And if they're a couple, the goal is to share those with each other. Okay, so they're processing their things in safety. And then we offer the online, where we're live and then people come on. And it's been so powerful because in short periods of time, because the concept is so visual and it's very simple, but it's very deep, very deep. And so in that, they start to see and put the pieces together, and they start to see the part of them that is been protecting them and keeping them at a distance from their mate, their friends, and they realize that that is not who they really, really are. And as that starts to open up, all their creativity, their destiny, their thoughts start to be free floating. And it's like people that have like Christians that are just pastors or pastors' wives, and I mean, just lived a really wholesome life considering where I come from, right? It's like, it's one thing if you come from where I come from, you're like, oh yeah, I know that girl. That's like Beth on Yellowstone, right? But then you have other people that are like, their protectors are just socially acceptable and they're nice and yes, but they realize that's not who they really are. And so they're becoming freer and freer and being more vulnerable in their lives with people that they love. And then they have that connection and that closeness, and they feel the love in there, and the loneliness starts to move away, which is really powerful.
I think, yeah. And I don't think, and it can be busy on our side of it is, coaching the stuff like you all are doing in couples. It can seem like a busy world, but on the other side of that, there's not enough of you guys. There's not enough of you folks that are out helping, just mentor, because there's a huge gap. And
Mhm.
I found myself stuck in that gap. But Dean, you was talking about earlier, just growing up in a family that was impacted by addiction.
Mhm.
Um, how did those experiences shape your professional and personal mission to help others?
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of things. I mean, when you deal with turbulence, like my parents' marriage was really good for a long time. I think it's just in my teenage years that they began to struggle
Yeah,
with when my dad's alcoholism progressed. But I think out of survival, you develop certain skills of depending on what role you take. I was kind of the helper, sort of peacemaker,
Hero.
hero, and so that was just part of the way I adapted. But it also was sort of the training that helped me learn to deal with people. I just had that extra sense of being able to tell where people are and had a different level of empathy and compassion. And so some of the very survivalistic things that I
Mhm.
developed actually became part of the skill set that I've been able to use to help others. I mean, it has the two sides of it
yeah.
in a sense that it could be any skill that we have could be used for good, or it
Mhm.
could run us down and wear us out. But that's the growing edge. So in some sense, I think that was part of the destiny that I'm so thankful for the family that I have been in, the great things that I was put in me, the struggles that we've had, because it really helped me learn to serve the people that I serve. And and I think when you experience certain things, you have another level of compassion and empathy when you go through things. If we talked about the riptide, look, if I meet anybody that's that's almost drowned and been through a riptide, I have deep compassion for
Mhm.
them. Anybody that's dealt with substance abuse in a family system and the impact of that, I have
You
deep
can't teach
compassion.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
you can't, as whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. You
Right.
can't teach that. It's, and when you have same, like I have tons of things that we could say are traumas. As someone, if I was being interviewed, they would tell me that was my traumas growing up, right? Of childhood and violence and all the craziness. But it really sets you on a path to where
Mhm.
you're relatable. And
yeah,
both of you have to have that when it comes to working with people. If you listen to any of my episodes, I'm very transparent when I tell people. There's probably a point in time when I needed to go find some counseling, some help. It was hard for me to find someone who could relate with what
Mhm.
I was going through.
mm,
Probably more so now, but it was also, I'm going to lean back again and say that may have been a crutch or an excuse because I didn't pursue, but we didn't have access to the internet as good as we do now. Um, but your relatability is big, and that takes you to, just your ability to help.
yeah,
But
Mhm.
when you do that, is like, what's that legacy look like for you all, and what do you hope to leave for your family and the people that you're
Mhm.
working with? And you got your book, your coaching program, and all those things. What is that? What are you looking to leave, or what's that impact you'd like to have felt?
Well, I'll go, in the Word of God, it talks about leaving 7 generations of wealth.
Yeah.
And, the wealth that I want to leave and am leaving to our son is emotional health.
Yeah.
And, I can say he just got married Saturday. He's 25 years old and he is very emotionally healthy. He has boundaries. He's not afraid of man. He has a voice. He knows he has a connection with God. He knows how to pray. He knows who he is. You can't sway him. He's bold. And when things happen, he knows how to go within and look at what's happening. So I know that this is what I've given him, and this is what I give to my clients, is that for them to have the emotional health on how to love themselves emotionally, how to understand that, and how to deal with it when they're away from me. I mean, that's always the goal. Like, I got to work my way out of a job, and, teaching them how to internally parent themselves where they come from, that it's not about blaming people. It's like people can only give you what they have.
Yeah.
They can't give you what they don't know. And whatever the reason is, there are evil people. I'm not, I know I've had lots of clients that have grown up in evil, but the majority of us grow up with people that they're lacking, they're wounded, and they're doing their very best. So it's like we look at that, and then we take the good, and then we look at what didn't work, and we figure out and we learn to love ourselves and get the skills so we can be better and give that to our families and our children.
It's good. Dean, what are you going to add to that value bomb?
She done did it. She done did it. Well, I think that it's pretty simple. I was learned, one of my first mentors taught me a very simple prayer. He said, God, help me to learn to have a greater knowledge and love of you, a greater knowledge and love of myself, and a greater knowledge and love of all those that I interact with today.
Yeah.
And so, really, when it comes down to it, those three relationships, love of self, love of others, love of God, is really what it's all about. So that's always been my heart, is to help people grow in those three relationships. And when you grow in one, it impacts the other two.
Mm-hmm.
When one is destroyed, it impacts the other two.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a pretty simple way that I feel called. Like, that's my calling, is to help people grow in those three relationships and to empower them. And sometimes if someone grows in learning to love themselves, and it clears up their relationship with others, it oftentimes will clear up a relationship and a connection with God, and vice versa. So that's really my focus of what I go after. And I think if we do that, then that's where we'll find our peace. And that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Peace is a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's kind of takes us to where we are, right? Is that's your whole, as we wrap up here, and that's the way we began and the way that we end here.
Mm-hmm.
Through all this craziness, chaos, all the things, and our ultimate goal here
Mm-hmm.
is just finding peace.
Yes.
And you two do a great job of, just in this short time we've talked. Like, I hear this a lot because I work around it, but it's very relatable, and I think that's a big deal. How do you want folks to get in touch with you?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to our website, ihaveavoice.com. And at that, you can access a link to get our book, A Roadmap to the Soul. There's a link for our YouTube channel, which we have over 300 videos, free videos that you can watch. And if you're really ambitious and you want to look into Transform You and do the 4-month intense vow coaching program, we can certainly look at that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's links and all at ihaveavoice.com.
Yeah, we'll make sure that I'll make sure we note those, just like everyone does. But it's always nice to have that. Not all links match up. I have a website, I have all the things, but shoot me a message through Instagram. You're going to talk directly to me without having to go through anything crazy. Just sending that message. But I can't thank you enough. To give me the opportunity to learn more about you and let me amplify your message and through my platforms. And I think there's a lot of power in that, and just our ability to connect. And On my podcast, I always do about second chances because I feel like life has given me multiple second chances, and some that
Nice.
I speak to when I speak, right? So I enjoy helping, and for the folks that are listening. This was me and Dean and HollyKem's get to know. We're just this was our first conversations in getting to know each other, and you never know where these conversations are going to go. And um, like I said, when we opened with just ultimate chaos and then as we ended our episode, just by chance, we focused on peace, and I
Yeah.
think that's a great way to wrap up. But I would love for us to reconnect in a few months and maybe have a client on there, or a story of something that been able to make a big difference, or whatever that looks like, and just have you guys' brains working about what you'd like to come back on, and let's just talk about it. You guys can tell me all about it. So
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be
That sounds
great.
good.
And I love what you're doing because, so many people, when you're in the pain, you think
yeah,
it's it. This is it.
yeah.
And to know that, no, it's not it. It's just a moment, and that there are second chances
It's
over and
finding
over and
finding
over.
finding the right voice that will come into your ears.
Hmm.
Now, I had thousands of people probably telling me, Jeff, it's gonna be all right, it's gonna be all right. But I did not want to listen to anyone. And
Hmm.
there was a moment when I can almost think about the person who said it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what I need. Yeah, well, hang on, say it again. And everybody over here is like, we've been trying to tell you, and I'm like, ah, stop talking, I'm listening, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
so I'll tell everyone, I just wasn't ready to listen. I heard you all the whole time. I just wasn't ready to listen. I think there's a
Right.
lot to be said for that too.
Yeah, that's good.
Uh, thank you all. Thank you for being with me tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right.